Mudcat, it's Bob and Tony here in Eastern Connecticut. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Mudcat.
We just, before we came on the air, Mudcat, I gave your background as far as the time you played and the teams you played with, and again, how you were a two-time All-Star. And I gave a lot of the stats so we can get right into the questions. I just wanted to make sure we talk about your upbringing in Florida, Mudcat, and some of your early influences and how you really developed your interest in baseball.
Well, you're talking about La Cucci, Florida, which is about between Ocala and Tampa, Florida. And we had a lumber mill team down there. Cummer Sons and Cypress Company was a big lumber mill. So we played baseball, and I was the bat boy at age 7, 8, 9, 10, and they let me take batting practice when the guys took batting practice after they got off from work at the lumber mill, and they let me take batting practice. And they made sure that I played the infield. I didn't play the outfield. I played the infield, and sometimes I played third base at age 13, 14, 15. And sometimes I played shortstop and second base. But that was the background of when I started playing baseball at a very early age.
Wow. And he became a pitcher. Now, we talked before you came on the air, Mudcat, about your MLB. First of all, let me tell you one thing. My father used to love you. And my father passed away a couple years back, Mudcat, but he just loved guys with nicknames, and obviously he followed the game really closely in the 60s. And I had written a couple columns this summer about some of the greatest nicknames in baseball history, and yours was one of them. And we went over how you became, and we'll get to that in a minute, but I just want to thank you for some great memories on behalf of my father, because anytime you would pitch, he said, "Bob, the cat's pitching tonight," and then I would know Mudcat would be on the mound. But that was some great memories there. But
well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much on that.
Thank you. And you know, you made we talked about, Tony and I talked about your debut in 1958, Mudcat. You probably were nervous in a little way, but you didn't show it. A complete game in your first major league start. Give us your memories of that day.
Well, I had to remember that game because Cleveland in 1958 had a great pitching staff. They had Ray Narleski, who was probably the first short reliever. He could throw real hard, but Early Wynn, Bob Lemon, Mike Garcia, all of those early strong pitchers for the Cleveland Indians. I sneaked in and started the third game of that season, and it was against Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky enough to pitch 9 innings and pitch against a pretty good ball club also.
Yeah, Kansas City, and again, that was a year in which you would win 10 games. You pitched 11 complete games, 10 more after that. And it was an incredible start to an incredible career. Tony, you have a question for Mudcat.
I sure do. Mudcat, it's an honor. Thanks for being with us. I've always been curious about something. Bob has a story about you. I have one. A very good friend, father, was a Yankee fan. He would get terribly nervous anytime you showed up on the mound against the Yankees, but he couldn't call you Mudcat. He'd call you Wildcat.
Wildcat Muddy Grant.
Wildcat Muddy Grant. And I guess that's my question. How'd you get the name Mudcat?
Well, in spring training, years ago in spring training, with the minor league kids, and I was one of those kids, and we had about maybe 400 ball players in camp trying to make a team. They had classifications back in those days of D, C, B, A, AA, AAA, and then, of course, to the major leagues. And there was an awful lot of black ball players back in those days. We're talking about 1954, of course. And back in the day, most black guys in spring training, they thought we were all from Mississippi. And they start calling me Mississippi Mudcat for no reason or whatever. And pretty soon they dropped the Mississippi Mudcat, and it just started out with Mudcat. And it was really interesting because I didn't pitch for a while. I didn't pitch until probably halfway through spring training of 1954. And Red Ruffin and Spud Chandler walked up to me one day, and they says, a guy is going to come around, and he's going to ask you to come back next year, because I was a third baseman and shortstopper at that time. And he said, if they do, tell them that you could pitch. So when the guy come around and he says, Mudcat, we are going to have you come back next year. We think that you can be a pretty good ball player, and you'll be a great infielder. I said, but you haven't seen me pitch yet. They said, you can't pitch. I said, yes, I can. So Red Ruffin and Spud Chandler, great Yankees, they took me in the bathroom, and they showed me how to throw a few pitches. I didn't know what the hell was going on. But to stay in camp, I said, I will try to do this. And they said, by the way, you are going to pitch today. I said, today? They said, yeah. And you are going to pitch against a Class A team. You are not placed yet as to where you're going to go, but you're going to pitch against a Class A team. The first guy up, we want you to throw one on his chin. I said, throw it under his chin. What do you mean? They said, throw it underneath his chin. I said, I can't do that. They said, yeah, you can. So the first guy on that inner squad game, I threw one on his chin, and some of the other ball players looked at what was going on, and nobody stood up to the plate after that because they didn't want to get hit. Of course, I didn't want to hit anybody. So that's when I started pitching.
Wow. And my goodness, you spent parts of 7 years in Cleveland, Mudcat, and had some incredible success in the old Municipal Stadium. And Tony and I remember it as just a huge place that held about 80,000 people. What are your memories of that ballpark, Mudcat?
Well, it was just unbelievable. My first year in 50, like you guys are saying, opening day you had 80,000 people. And the next day you only had 3,000 people. It was just unbelievable. When the Yankees came to town, the first game of a 4-game series, there was about maybe 40,000, 45,000 or something like that. And the next day there would only be 3,000. So it was a little bit different. But Municipal Stadium was one of those stadiums that was huge, and we only got people in the ballpark when the Yankees came into town.
I believe the game I told our viewers about, your complete game and your debut, I think there was 2,800 people there, Mudcat. You got shortchanged there. You do all this.
Well, it
work.
was Kansas City.
Yeah.
And Kansas City didn't draw that much.
Yeah.
But we had a few ball clubs that drew. The Boston Red Sox drew pretty decent when they came into town. But I was just happy to be on the ball club because we had gotten Larry Doby back. I think he was traded before to the White Sox, and then he came back, and I was on that team with him. But the Cleveland Indians had a team that they were one of those ball clubs that had African American players on it quite a bit. and I got a chance to meet all of those early African American players that was in the league. I had met Jackie Robinson as a kid, and Don Newcomb as a kid, but the fact that we had Dave Pope, we had Luke Easter, we had Larry Doby, we had about 6. We had Suitcase Simpson, another nickname, and I was glad that Suitcase was on the team because somebody else had a nickname, but it was very interesting.
Again, for our viewers out there, we're on the air with legendary pitcher Jim Mudcat Grant, and as we talk to Mudcat, we have pictures of his career that we're showing on our TV screen at different stages of his career. Some great pictures there, Tony.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
Again, we're happy and honored to be joined by Mudcat Tony.
And Mudcat, with the Indians, were you ever in the presence of Satchel Paige, and did he rub a couple of things off on you?
I have this photo. When I was a rookie in '58. I have this photo of me, Satchel Paige, Lou Boudreau, and Larry Doby, and I was just a rookie sitting on the bench, and Satchel Paige was in town. This was opening day. They were honoring him, and a writer. I was sitting away from these guys, and because being a rookie, you don't want to get in anybody's way. But the photographer said, "Mudcat, would you like to take a photo with these guys?" And I jumped at the chance, and I got this great photo of me, Larry Doby, Satchel Paige, and Lou Boudreau, and myself as a rookie. I worship that photo, and it's all over the place because a lot of people, I guess they couldn't believe that this rookie sneaked in and took a picture with Satchel Paige and Larry Doby.
And Mudcat, we were talking prior to the broadcast about the 65. It was a magical season for you. The 21-7, we talked about it. You led the league in wins, winning percentage, shutouts, and that was your first full season. Obviously, you didn't have any trouble adjusting to pitching in Minnesota.
No, I didn't. Pitching in Cleveland was great, and the ball club. One year we had a fantastic ball club, but we struggled before I was traded up to Minnesota. And the first year I had a decent year, and then of course I got to the year 65 where I became a 20-game winner. But I had 2 great pitching coaches. Mel Harder was the first one, and of course after that, Johnny Sain came over to the Minnesota Twins as a pitching coach, and he really enlightened. Even though Jim Cott won 20 under Johnny Sain, and Johnny Sain taught us a lot about the game of pitching, how to maneuver 9 innings. How to make sure that you were in shape to pitch 9 innings. So, Minnesota, I don't consider myself lucky, but sort of I consider myself lucky a little bit. But I was able to throw strikes that year, and I was able to field the ball get some double plays and so forth and so on. So, becoming the first African American to win 20 games in the American League, it was great, and being able to become the first African American to win a World Series game in the American League, that was super also. So thanks to Johnny Sain and thanks to Mel Harder.
Yeah, we've mentioned the both of them on previous shows and about pitch counts and everything, and we'll get to that. But I know, Tony, we want to talk a little bit about that 65 World Series.
Oh, we certainly do, and I'll tell you, Mudcat, that was an incredible series. And we're not going to let you get lost to history. You pitched 3 games in that series. You won 2. You beat Don Drysdale. You hit a homer. And what kind of an experience was that, being in a World Series? I can't even imagine it. Can you describe it?
Oh, it was just fantastic. My mom was in the stands at that time, and she had some wonderful seats. And being in the World Series and facing the possibility of facing Sandy Koufax, of course, Drysdale certainly was a great pitcher also, but I was supposed to have faced Sandy Koufax, and it would have been the first time a Jewish pitcher and an African American pitcher would start the World Series, and I look forward to that. And I wasn't, I did a lot of study on Sandy Koufax, but Sandy decided because of Yom Kippur that he was not going to start that game, and often I say I want to thank Mr. Kapoor for not standing up pitching that game, but a World Series, that and every day pitching, that's one thing, but to open the World Series, to pitch in the World Series, this little kid from Lacucci, Florida,
right?
Just unbelievable. The fact that it was against the Dodgers also, and I had spent so much time studying the history of Jackie Robinson, Don Newcomb, Joe Black, and all of those guys. Man, my eyes just lit up when they introduced us that day. So it was just one of those things. It was one of those memories that if you were there, you're never going to forget it. That's for sure.
And you did a couple things in that series, as Tony mentioned, Mudcat, that may not be done again. First of all, a total of 23 innings pitched in a World Series, Tony. I don't see how that can ever be done again.
Me neither.
2 complete games, very tough to do. And, of course, he hit a home run. With the DH now, you would only be able to bat. You don't know if a pitcher. But amazing. And we just wanted to tell our viewers that when, people talk about World Series heroes and everything, I think your performance that year, Mudcat, goes under the radar.
You need to be mentioned.
Yeah, we talk about Koufax and guys that were, but you had an incredible, but because your team came up a little short. But when I read about all the things you did that series, you did everything except sell popcorn, so we have to mention that to our viewers. It was great stuff. So, Tony, continue.
And Mudcat, on that Twins club, your third base coach was your former teammate, Billy Martin. And was the Billy of those days the Billy that we all came to know in New York, or was he a little bit different or not?
Yeah, he was a little bit different. Billy, of course, Billy and my mom was real tight. And whenever we was on the road and we had a chance, and Billy knew that I was calling home, he and Mom would have these conversations. And I remember Mom would always say to Billy, Billy, are you being good? So Billy said, yes, ma'am. She says, well, I'm going to pray for you, Billy. Because she knew Billy was cutting up and so forth and so on. But if you were a friend of Billy Martin, you had a real friend. Now, he did get in a little trouble from time to time, but he knew the game of baseball. And that was one of the things that a lot of people, because of his name, Billy Martin, probably didn't quite understand the real Billy Martin. And at third base, he taught the infielders the game of baseball. the intensity of the game itself, and it was a shame that he went the way he went. I'm talking about the accident,
Right.
Where he was killed.
Right.
But he was very close to me, and we had great conversations through the few years that we were together with the Minnesota Twins. And it's too bad that there isn't a book written about Billy, and putting his record and putting his attitude in a proper place where people could really appreciate Billy Martin.
Again, we're honored to be on the phone and on the air with Jim Mudcat Grant, former pitcher for 7 different teams in his career. And Mudcat, you followed up that 65 season with a very good year with the Twins. Tony, his ERA was actually better in 66.
Yes.
But he was a 500 pitcher, just the way the game goes. But after that season, Mudcat, your last 5 were mostly in relief. How did that role come about?
Well, I became a relief pitcher. I was chosen in a draft back there, I think in 69 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I was Montreal Expos' first pitcher. Gene Mark was the manager over there. And I had a pretty decent year. But during those years, if you were an expansion ball club, you did a lot of trading. Yeah. To get your ball club to the point where you thought that it could be a pennant type of ball club. And the Cardinals wanted a starter and a relief pitcher. Mm-hmm. And so Malk traded me to the Cardinals, and I became, and even though me and Bob Gibson started 4 doubleheaders that year and won all 4 of them, but I started pitching in relief and got to the point that I liked it. Mm. But how it really evolved was that Charles O. Finley, of course, was with the Oakland A's, owner of the Oakland A's, and he called the St. Louis Cardinals, and he said, "I got Blue Moon Odom, I got Catfish Hunter. You guys don't need Mudcat Grant, so I want you to trade him over here, so I can have Mudcat Grant by the Blue Catfish Hunter, Blue Moon Odom."
You can't get any
and
better
a few
nicknames.
other guys. So when I went over there, I became a relief pitcher.
Yeah.
And acted and had one heck of a year.
You had some incredible. Again, I don't want to interrupt you, Mudcat, but 68 with the Dodgers. You were 6-4, 2.08, and that 70 season combined with Oakland and Pittsburgh, 8-3, 1.86. And 71 was your last year in the majors, 6-3, 3.17. That would get you a new $10 million contract these days, and you retired.
You got that right.
Right? But did you go out on your own terms, Mudcat? I mean, you were still at the top of your game.
Sort of going out on your own terms. I didn't quite go out like I wanted to go out, but I was definitely satisfied with the way that I was pitching. Nobody wanted to pay me. With those great years, I went back to Oakland, and then after that, nobody just wanted to pay me. They wanted me to pitch, but they didn't want to pay me. So I had a real good musical career at that time. So actually, I was making as much money as a blues singer as I was playing baseball. It didn't bother me a whole lot, the fact that nobody, would pay me, that I left the game without really wanting to leave at that time because I had a good musical career. But that's the way the game is, my friend.
Yeah, again, and Tony was talking about your musical ability.
My
Tony,
cat and the kittens.
That's right.
that's some great stuff right there. And again, we got a couple minutes left with Mudcat. Tony, go ahead, continue.
You know, Mudcat, you're a starter. You go to the bullpen. You pitch your heart out. You pitch your guts out. Johnny Sane tells you got to go 9 innings. We got this fella now in New York who wants to limit his pitches. And what do you think about all of this?
You know, I always thought, I think Tony La Russa sort of started this thing about bringing in, you know, relief pitches and stuff like that. He had that kind of attitude, but I think that if you can pitch 9 innings, I think it's something that doesn't happen nowadays. But Tony, you really have to get in shape to pitch 9 innings. We used to throw batting practice in between starts to make sure that your arm was strong enough to go 9 innings. Now, I remember pitching 16 innings against the New York Yankees one year because I was in shape to pitch 9 innings. And in spring training, what we would do is that we would at least pitch 9 innings about 4 times in spring training before you start the season to make sure. And the fundamentals of the game is not the same either. Ball players nowadays, they're falling to the left, falling to the right. You know, their footwork is not too good now in terms of making sure that you're physically fit to do it. So, but that's the way the game is played today, and there's nothing nobody can do about it.
And Mudcat, I was telling Tony right before we came on, we've had hundreds of guests on this show, many former major leaguers. I don't think I've ever talked to a person who played with so many great players as you did. It's a combination of the 7 teams you play with, the era you play with. I counted at least 14 Hall of Famers, and I got a ton more of just incredibly talented players like your Dean Chances, Tony, your Tony Oliva, your Jim Cott. That was
Rocky
just
Colavito.
right? And then in L.A., you got your Bill Singers, your Austin. But I have to mention one guy because it's his birthday today, and you played with him, Mudcat, Sam McDowell, Sudden Sam. We've talked, and we've heard stories about how fast this guy was, and later the problems he had in life. But tell us a little what you remember about Sudden Sam.
Sudden Sam, this guy he really was a hell of a pitcher. There's no doubt about it. Because throw hard. Had a real nasty curveball. But he was kind of strange a little bit from time to time. I remember him getting in a fight with a linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings. And I said, Sam, that's the last person that you want to get in a fight with. It's better that you got in a fight with a bat rather than these guys and stuff like that. But I remember taking them to Harlem one time, him and Gary Bell, Woody Hell. They wanted to go to the Apollo Theater in Harlem to hear the Four Tops, Gladys Knight, and the Pips and those guys. And I took them there, and they had a great seat for us all. And what happened was that after the show was over, I ran off and left them in Harlem. So Sam never forgave me for that. He's running down 7th Avenue, and I had these 3 white guys, and they were running like hell to get out of Harlem. They could never find me. Of course, they didn't treat me too good after that either.
But
Sam McDowell was a good pitcher. He was a real good pitcher.
Great memory.
Didn't pay too much attention to his pitching coach, but he was a good pitcher.
Yeah, we've heard stories, and man, I tell you, that's some great stuff. And again, we got to mention Tony Mudcat's 2000 book, The Black Aces.
Yes.
Which is the 15 African American pitchers who won 20 games in a season, and he spends some time talking about each one as in that book. Okay, Tony, question?
Mudcat, you talk about the fine players. I'm going to mention 40. Kitty Cott, Maury Wills, Tony Oliva, and Minnie Minoso. Why are they not in the Hall of Fame?
I don't understand that. I don't understand why many, all of those years that he played, and I don't understand it with Jim Cott. I mean, 286 victories should put you in the Hall of Fame. I just don't quite understand that. Tony Oliva should be there. And if one of my perks is that I don't quite understand the way voting is, and especially when you miss getting into the Hall of Fame the first couple of years, and it seems like the voters forget you, and sometimes I want to speak out. And how about Lee Smith?
Yeah, sure.
Another one.
Oh man, I just don't understand it. And then there are some people in the Hall of Fame that
yeah, we understand.
like 250, 256 or something. Like. Mazeroski is a great friend of mine. Yeah. But he got in there.
Yeah.
With a 230 or something like that.
Yeah.
And all of that kind of stuff. I can't quite explain it. I wish somehow that there's an article written, and a lot of the guys don't want to say nothing that's not in the Hall of Fame for fear that it would hurt their chances if they complain about getting into the Hall of Fame.
Understood.
Yeah. One last question, Mudcat, before we let you go. I want to bring up a good memory. I know in 2008 you were honored, you threw out the first pitch at Progressive Field. That was to commemorate your big league debut 50 years prior. And you were also given a key to the city that day in remembrance. That must have been a very, very special day for you.
Oh, you know what, that I never will forget that. And it's so wonderful. It's wonderful to throw out a first pitch anywhere. But next week, I'm throwing out the first pitch in Minnesota, which is really nice. The few things that have happened to me in the game of baseball is wonderful. I never will forget it. By the way, I've been awarded. I kind of lost the memory of that, but those special moments for me where I was awarded certain things here and there. Yeah. The game of baseball, and I got 19 grandbabies and I got 31 great grandbabies.
My goodness.
They all think, "Oh, Pops is tough stuff, man."
And back in the day, he was, and he still is. Again, a two-time All-Star, 2,500 innings pitched, and a World Series hero in our book. Jim Mudcat Grant, we can't thank you enough, Mudcat, for taking the time.
An absolute pleasure, sir.
And we will like to stay in touch with you. And it was truly an honor in memory of my father and everyone who's ever watched you pitch. And gives us the great memories. We always smile when we hear your name, and we thank you for your efforts tonight, sir.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate that. Call me anytime.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Be
Take
well,
care.
Sir.